I'm in Southampton today for Motorboating Yachting, looking at a used Fairline Targa 48 with Fairline Southampton. Now this is the boat, and it was introduced in 2013. It was the first new model they brought out for 2 years, and they really went to town on this one. They spent almost 3 million developing it, and it replaced the Targa 47, but it's a very, very different boat. It is more than a foot wider, it's a lot higher, and it was quite a radical departure. Another thing it had, for example, was this is the first Fairline to be developed specifically for IPS drives. They had done a Targa 44 before with IPS, but that was an outdrive, an IPS boat. I'm just going to show you one change on the outside that happened in this boat's life. When this boat came out, it had square windows down the side, and in 2018 they changed it for this one-piece section that you can see along here, which all looks very nice. And I do like this, these little illuminated Targa badges are excellent. Anyway, let's go on board and I shall tell you a little bit more about this one. Now, one of the important things to know about this is there's two versions of the Targa 48. There is the Open, which this one is, and then there is a GT. So we'll head on via the bathing platform. Now, the Opens, almost all of them, had this high-low platform. It'll lift a Williams 285 or a Sea-Doo Spark, but there's also a garage in here. In fact, the dealer told me they'd only ever sold one boat without the high-low platform, and that boat had the high-low platform retrofitted, so very popular option. And in fact, what some owners do is they'll have a Williams 285 in the garage, and then in the summer they'll put the Williams on chocks out here and use the garage for paddle boards and bicycles and that kind of thing. In the winter they'll take all that out and put the tender inside, which I think is a rather neat idea. Anyway, let's head on. There's a sun pad at the back here. This I think is rather clever. So the canopy comes down to here, and what you can do then is pull your sunbed cushions forward, as they are in this one. You have to take them off, but they're inside the canopy, which I think is a very neat idea. So, the difference between the Open and the GT. Well, the Open has the hard top, but it comes back and it's completely open match. Once you've got this cover off, this is all one big cockpit section. On the GT version, there were doors here, and as you went forward, you went into a deck saloon on the main deck. So this became an internal saloon area, and then there was some seating outside, and so on. And up above, this one has the fabric roof. So this whole section here opens up. On the GT, it was a GRP roof. So it was a smaller opening because it had to obviously have an area that it could fold back into, but was a little bit more weatherproof. And in fact, there was one more version spun off this platform, which was a Squadron 48, which is a flybridge boat. So they really did pull out all the stops with this boat. Now here you've got a cockpit wet bar area. So this is things like your sink and your barbecue. And there's a fridge underneath as well, and this one has the ice maker. In fact, there's a package which is the generator, an ice maker, and the griddle, which was an option that you could specify when the boat was new. And if we head on a bit further forward, we've got a seating area up next to the helm, and the helm itself is over on this side. And as I say, you've got this massive opening roof section. So with this all the way back and the canopy off the back, it does make for a very open experience. Let's head on down and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. So down here, a light oak was standard, but a lot of people upgraded, as this one has been, to the walnut finish. And both those finishes you could have in a high gloss or a satin. And this one's the satin. High gloss obviously is a much more polished finish. And this is where you feel the real difference between the Targa 47 that this replaced and this Targa 48, because masses of headroom in here, a really big area. You can see this dinette behind me, and the galley opposite. And in fact, there was an option that if you wanted, you could have a bulkhead here and have that as a third cabin. Almost never happened on the Open version, because if you had that as a cabin, you lost any inside area. All of your seating area was outside in the cockpit. So if you have an Open, it'll almost certainly be this layout, but some of the GTs, they had the third cabin, and of course your saloon was upstairs. And I think we'll head to the back first of all, because this was the big news when this boat came out. It's a full beam master cabin. Very good size, lots of storage in here, decent headroom, and some nice lighting solutions as well. If I find the light switch, we can turn the main lights off, and you can see how they backlit areas like this and underneath the pelmets and so on. That's rather lovely. Let's switch that one back on. This has its own ensuite. I do love these Fairline door handles. They're little stainless steel works of art. So you've got a separate shower stall in there, and then you've got the sink, and the toilet is underneath this lift up section. But that was the big news when this boat came out. That full beam cabin in a sub 50-foot boat. That was a big improvement on the Targa 47. Let's head on down through the rest of the boat. So galley, as I say, on this side, there's some quite neat touches, like, for example, this is a big storage area in there. And then next to that you have your fridge and your freezer, and a distribution panel is up above that. All electric cooking on this one. And you'll notice there's a door here. Now that's into the day heads. So there's a shower on that side, and then the loo is back round again under a lift up section. And you'll see there's another door here, and I'll explain to you why. That is because that becomes an ensuite to the guest cabin, which is up here in the bow. Now the standard configuration for this cabin was a central island double bed. An option was these scissor berths. Pretty much every boat that ever went out had the scissor berths, because what you can do with these is slide them together into the centre to make that island bed, or split them apart, which of course is brilliant if you've got kids, for example. And again, you've got those funky lighting solutions. So if I switch the main overhead lights out, you can see all the backlighting everywhere. Rather nice. And this is the doorway into that heads compartment. So shower and loo, as we saw a moment ago. Excellent. This one's got air conditioning on it as well, which is another option. Now, as this boat went through its production life, there were quite a lot of improvements to the woodwork and the finish in here generally. So you find the newer the boat, the more luxurious it looks, and it's things like these leather panels on here, and the finish generally just gradually improved as time went on. So the newer one of these you get, inevitably the more expensive it is, but also the nicer it is. And the other thing I mentioned while we're in here is the flooring, because there were three options of this wooden flooring. You could have a lime washed oak, you could have the dove grey, which is what this one is, I think, or you could have a chocolate oak, which is a very dark colour, of course. And that would work well if you went for the light oak interior. Gives you a bit of contrast. Anyway, let's go and have a look at engines, and I'll tell you a little bit about the options there and the performance. So back out through here. So to get to the engines, in fact, there are two ways in. There is, if you lift the garage up, a big section of floor that will come out, so you can get right on top of both of the engines for servicing and that kind of thing. Underneath here is an inspection hatch, so if you just want to have a quick look without taking everything apart, then this is the way that you do it. So let's head on down. Now this is the tender garage, and you can see what I mean here. If you look down underneath here, you can see the engines, and these are the pods. The interesting thing with these is the pods are right back here, and they use jack shafts and put the engines further forward than they would otherwise have been, and that was to keep the weight forward and improve the centre of gravity. Now when this boat came out, it was fitted with IPS 600 engines. They were 435 horsepower each, based on a 5.5 litre D6 Volvo, and that was giving the boat about 32 knots. But in 2018 they started offering D8 IPS 700s, which is what these are. Now these are 550 horsepower, and they are lifting the performance up to around 35-36 knots. However, they are a physically bigger engine, so your downside to that is that you are filling this engine room up even more than it was with the IPS 600 versions. But these were certainly very popular because, of course, people like the bigger engines and they like the extra performance. But as I say, there is another way into this, which is under the floor in the tender garage, so there is more access than you can see here. Now this boat ran until 2019, and it was replaced by the Fairline Targa 50, which is largely the same boat with a few cosmetic upgrades. So the boat lives on, but now, as I say, known as the Targa 50.